over. I've done a lot of work and research in the arts around how engagement in the arts help to develop, enhance, and activate leadership effectiveness. I consider myself artistic leader. I also teach visual art, so that's been an extension of my work as an artist. I've been an artist my whole life, and I just continue to develop my abilities to use my art to advance my ability to be a leader in this world. So really a lot of the research that I've done is about considering the neurological, experiential, and perceptual aspects of art engagement, whether if you are creating art or even experiencing art that's been created by others. And we can further appreciate the deep connections between that and courageous leadership and how they can mutually reinforce each other to foster both personal and collective growth and transformation. And so, just so you also know, I just recently got my doctorate degree in transformational leadership and coaching. So a lot of this does relate to that as well. And I've also been an educator in the Chicago Public Schools for 14 years now, and continually progressed in higher levels of leadership, as well as a lot of mentoring and coaching. And so as far as our operating agreements for this short session, I just ask that all of us, we're fully present, turn off any distractions, and participate fully. And I would like it to be interactive if as much as possible. There's just a few moments during the presentation where I like to encourage people to share some of your thoughts or just some of your ideas about things. We will be viewing something a little bit later on in the presentation, and I would love to get your responses to that and your impressions, answering a couple questions that I had about what we're going to be viewing and experiencing together. And so if you're a little shy or you haven't been speaking up, I hope to encourage you just to share a little bit, because it's actually much more enriching if you can bring yourself to this presentation as well. And we don't have a huge group here, so it may not be too much of a problem, but just while you're sharing, if you can just try to bottom line and just say succinctly what you want to say, just to monitor airtime. And then all of us can just enjoy the luxury of doing this one thing right now. That's what my request is for all of us. And so my invitation is that I would like us to go on just a little brief journey of exploring ourselves, number one, and our connection to this topic of courageous leadership, and then how this relates to our dreams, our desires, passions, our pain, our deep emotions, our aspirations, our lived experiences, which are going to be unique for each person, and then how this all connects to art and this idea of courageous leadership. And one of the things that will make this a valuable session is if we can consider where we are in terms of what is known, the domain of what we know already, and this other domain, the much larger domain of what we don't know, what is still unknown to us. And I would like to challenge us to not just stay in the realm of what the known is, where it's comfortable, where we, can show off what we already know, our expertise, the things that we've already accomplished. But where we can go into the unknown is really where the greatest growth and learning can come from. And the thing we want to identify is the growth edge. Like, what is our growth edge that will take us beyond where we're comfortable? And that's where I really want us to be right now during the session, is right on the edge of the growth edge, where it might be a little scary, it might not be completely comfortable, but that's the challenge. That will lead us to more of what we want to consider as courageous leadership. And so I know probably a lot of us have had some experience with this concept already. We've been to previous sessions, and there's a lot of different definitions that could be attached to this concept. Now, the one that I pulled, I think is most relevant to our topic. It is the ability to take bold and principled action in the face of uncertainty, adversity, or potential negative consequences. And so I think that to me is like really what is the most powerful aspect of this concept. Again, why I want us to go beyond where we're comfortable into the unknown, because as leaders, it is very challenging to stand up for what we believe when there is not necessarily a consensus around us, or there's a challenge to the ideas that we hold dear, or the vision that we have for what we want to achieve, and it hasn't actually happened yet, and it's new territory, and therefore it's unknown, and others may not be on board with us because it is scary. It is something that we aren't truly comfortable with yet. And so being the courageous leader is like dealing and working with other people's resistance to going into the unknown, and the fear that comes with that. So we would be the ones to take the first steps. And then how do we then take those first steps ourselves so that way we can help others come on the journey with us? And so some of the things that I just kind of wanted to highlight about what courageous leadership involves is about making difficult decisions based on core values and our ethics, speaking up against wrongdoings or injustice, taking calculated risks for the greater good of our organizations or a larger community. That will require admitting mistakes and showing vulnerability, challenging the status quo when necessary, and standing firm on important issues, again, even when facing the opposition. So I just want you to keep thinking about how your life and your particular vision for leadership and what you want to achieve in the world with others. How do these things kind of line up to where you are currently and where you would like to go? Um, and so just to keep in mind the two ways that we're going to be looking at arts, leadership, and developing this capacity within ourselves. We have the intrapersonal domain, which is knowing ourselves, going within to notice, what are our preferences, what are our beliefs, what are our emotions, what are our desires that we have, what are the challenges that we face, how do we typically respond to things, and just knowing more about who we are so that we can become more effective in what we're trying to achieve, leading us to the interpersonal domain where we are now working with others and sharing the vision, getting others on board, building consensus and coalition building, building community, all those aspects where how are we relating from one to many? And so to help us with that process, I have created a form. And again, like Kelly said, this is all just a little bit of a taste of what we would be exploring in the course that I created for the Masters of Arts Leadership program. And in the chat, I'm going to put in the link to this form that if you would just go ahead and access that. Here's the form. It's going to ask you to create a copy of the form so you have your own version of that. And minutes just to consider this, do a self-reflection. If you can access the form and you're in a space where you can type into the form, just start filling that in, or you can just think about it or take some notes manually on what you think each of these components of the form would be for you. And if there's any questions at any point, just please feel free to raise your hand or come off mute and I can answer any of those questions. If you're having any difficulty accessing the form, please let me know. But I want to just give us about just a couple minutes here just to answer these questions for yourself. My hope is that after you fill some of this out, that you'd be willing to share a few of these ideas with the rest of the group so we can kind of get an idea of who's in the room, what you're looking for in the session, what you want to achieve in your leadership. And really important is what are the challenges that you're currently facing? So I'll just set the timer. I think we can probably just do like 2 minutes on this. Hmm. Okay, so that has been about 2 minutes there. And if you still need some more time to work on that, definitely feel free. But I do want to see, I'd like to open it up if anyone would like to share something that they wrote down in their form about their leadership vision, their mission, strengths, weaknesses, any challenges that you might be facing. Because I really think that the content of this session will be the most valuable to you if you are able to apply that to something that's really happening in your own life. So would anyone like to come off mute and share anything that they have been thinking about or writing down? This would be a great opportunity to even practice that sense of courageous leadership to actually just boldly make a statement and share with the group.
Peter, I'll share.
Okay, Kelly, thank you.
I want to be courageous. My vision is to be a joyful leader who helps people embrace all that's good about the world in a time that can sometimes feel really possible.
Oh, I don't know if it was just me, but I kind of lost the last part of your statement. I don't know if anybody heard it was like all staticky. Just repeat you said the joyful vision, and then
Oh,
I couldn't hear it. Try that one more time.
so I want to be a joyful leader who helps people embrace all that's good about the world.
Mhm,
And in a time that can sometimes feel kind of heavy and dark, showing
mhm.
people that there are all these good things that we can invest in.
Oh, wow. That is brilliant. I love that, especially for the world we're living in right now. There's so many ways that could apply, and it's very much. I think that vision is very much needed in the world right now. And Kelly, I just want to ask if there's any. Could you say what are the challenges you might be facing in trying to achieve that vision, or anything that you're trying to work on to develop further?
There's kind of like both ends of the spectrum of it feels like there's not enough time to do all of the things and there's so many possibilities that it's just sometimes mind-boggling, to see all that we have, all that we can contribute to, and that sometimes is a challenge. But at the same time, there are all the responsibilities of all of the things that kind of drag our time, and trying to find that efficiency to be able to free up bandwidth to do the things that are most important that create joy in the world.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Totally can relate to that. And so, one thing that it reminds me of what Sartre would say about, our existential condition is that we really have so many unlimited possibilities in every moment that if we were to consider all of them, it would just make us terrified and not know what to do. And he called it the dizziness of freedom. Just knowing there's so many possibilities. So then, yeah, the question is, how do we then use our time? And then how do we become efficient with what we're trying to do so that we can achieve what we're hoping to achieve? in the limited time that we're given, right? Just like even in this session, we only have like a short amount of time to even go through this topic. So I love that. Anyone else want to share too?
I came off mute. Hopefully, I'm coming through.
Yes, Matthew, go ahead.
Okay. So, my leadership vision, as a leader, I seek to be inclusive, empathetic, trusted, grounded, um, like to be a positive influence for progressive changes for all persons, co-workers, friends, what have you. But how will I accomplish, so what kind of things might hold me back? I guess it's really through being open and a genuine understanding of my own self, my personal limitations, and even my own biases. Being aware if I have a bias about something, and that sometimes can be difficult. I think too. We don't always understand, through how we were raised or grew up, that we have biases even, and breaking through those and beyond those is, I think, helps a lot in furthering your ability to be a trusted leader.
Oh yeah, absolutely, Matthew. So you kind of pointing out this, and something I'm going to be talking about a little bit in a second here, is how we don't know what we don't know. And so we operate as if, we have an understanding of things, but what we don't know is just not even in our awareness and not in our consciousness, like our biases, our personal prejudices that we may have, or anything that might prevent us from seeing a bigger picture, or even knowing what we're doing and what kind of impact we're having on the world, because we're not even noticing that those things might even be factors that could be either helping us or hindering us from achieving what we want to achieve. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
If anybody else, yeah. And if anybody else wants to share too, if we have some more time, I just want to make sure that we can get to everything that we have planned. So I'm going to reshare my screen. Oops, sorry. And we'll just, sorry, I hit the wrong button there. There we go. See, this is another thing. Like, if I was more savvy, I'd have like a tech person doing all this for me. Maybe next time. So one of the things that from the research, and we're going to be looking at that in the actual course that I designed as well. It's like, what does it mean to be an artist and a leader, or an artistic leader? And how do you use that to help address some of the challenges that both Kelly and Matthew had presented, and anything else you might be thinking of? So one of the concepts they have been identifying as aesthetic sensitivity. And so when you're engaging with the arts, when you're creating it, when you're experiencing it, viewing it, interacting with it, it's defined as the capability or the capacity of a leader to explore the sensual perception of reality. And by sensual, I mean like the senses. What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? The internal experience that you're having about reality. And this is the capacity they're saying, from the research, is really what is necessary now for a leader to deal with this ever more complex, ambiguous world that we live in with so many unknowns. They're saying, adaptability, flexibility, and innovation are really strong components of the leader of this day and age. And so that's why I think it's really exciting that we can share this with the leaders that are developing right now, so that we can really be effective in the world that we're experiencing. And so when you look at aesthetic sensibility in the arts, you can break it down into the typical 4 arts disciplines that are definitely what is taught in the school systems, and how we can develop our understanding of what are the arts. We have the visual arts, the musical arts, theater, and dance. And I also want to throw in one too that isn't always considered as often, but there's also this idea of performance art, where you yourself, or the artist, is the art, and is being the art. Whatever the art is, you just become it, and you become a part of it. And there's many ways that could happen, but it's another realm that I just want us to consider, that even as artistic leaders, how are we living the vision, the message, the values, and the principles that we want to promote and promulgate into the world? And so like Matthew was also talking about, there's that sense of self-awareness. Like by engaging with the arts, we are allowing ourselves to explore areas of ourselves we may not be as clear about. We may not have a necessarily conscious awareness of those aspects of ourselves, which could include our values, strengths, weaknesses, tendencies, habits, the emotional and physiological responses we have to different things and different events that happen, different things that might trigger us in our environment, especially when we're working with people. I don't know about you, but I get triggered by people all the time. So it's just something that when I'm aware that I'm going to be triggered by something, then I can make those adjustments and have that self-awareness in order to deal with it more effectively. And so as an artist, I think that has really helped me to learn how to develop those capacities, to regulate my emotions, to be aware of myself, to be aware of others more. And there's this concept that I wanted to share with you that has really helped me understand how our brains operate and how that we can use the different aspects of our brain to develop that deeper sense of awareness, as well as tap into our artistic and creative capabilities. So just real quick, just to summarize what this theater of knowing model is trying to show, that on the left, in terms of the left brain, which may not be literally left brain, but it's all those functions that are very logical, sequential. They're the definitions of the things that are in our conscious mind and in our awareness that we know, that really kind of just flood our normal thinking processes. But what they're saying is that there's a huge, vast realm of understanding and knowing and learning and sensation and impressions that we all have stored within us, but it's contained within the right side of the brain. And it's hard to access, and it's mostly in the unconscious or subconscious realm. And the trick is to figure out, how do we then dive into that subconscious space that is normally shrouded in darkness and mystery, to then gain access to that, bring it into our consciousness so that it becomes part of our leadership identity. And so what they're saying is, if we can lower the processes of our left brain, stop all that logical thinking from dominating our mental space and our awareness, that allows what they call the curtain of awareness, which is right in this model in the middle, where we can dim the lights from the left brain, that allows us to then see what is happening behind that scrim, to see all that's going on within our unconscious mind. And that's what the artist is able to do when we get into that process of tapping into that creative flow, that creative energy. We're not thinking about it as logically and just allowing that process to run its course, feeling, intuition, metaphors, connections, and the emotions. The emotions are really core to all of this. That's how we can start to access a lot of that hidden information. When Kelly was talking about how, where do we find the time and how do we get more efficient? That may be information that is deep within our subconscious, but unless we allow ourselves to still that part of our mind that is constantly thinking and already knows things, to allow the unknown to emerge, then we may not as easily find those solutions. And they may be buried, they may be buried within us and we know them already, and we just didn't have an awareness of that. And so from the arts and connecting the arts to courageous leadership, is kind of where I just want to go through a few of these ideas before we then have a little bit of a taste of an art experience. And I want to get everyone's take on this art experience and what you make of it in terms of courageous leadership principles, such as encouraging diverse perspectives. So, a leader isn't just someone like in the old days where it's top-down command and control and everybody just follows what the leader says without question. It's really more about like, how do we operate with a more distributive model, and how do we interact with each other with a more equitable framework to understand each person's individual and unique viewpoints. So the arts are unique in that they're unique for everyone, and they reflect our unique life experiences, our family upbringings, our values, cultures, and communities. So by creating art and viewing and experiencing art, we can share more of ourselves with each other in a way that is more dynamic than just try to maybe just talk about it or guess just by looking at a person. Another one is supporting innovation. Really important for leaders, encouraging calculated risk-taking and learning from failures. I saw a message from Ryan that he really loves the calculated risk-taking, as opposed to just flying into the unknown without, any plan, but being more strategic. And so art enhances our perspectives, skills, techniques, processes, the systems in which we operate, the cultures, the paradigms, and even the civilization from which we actually, find ourselves in right now. You can look through art history that's really a lot of times what art is doing is like defining the civilization. And so here we are in our civilization, and as courageous leaders, we are not trapped by what the status quo is or the ways that people think things should be happening and think the ways things should be done now. As creative leaders, we have the potential to push beyond that paradigm into new territory, which is kind of like the challenge of, okay, then how do we do that? And then how do we get others on board with us as well? So that's going to involve building trust. Now, this is like how we create an environment where team members feel safe to voice concerns and take risks. Or even I could say building trust even first, like that interpersonal realm of trust within ourselves. How do we trust ourselves more in order to be able to help build that trust with others? And so art allows one to share vulnerable aspects of ourselves with each other in a way that could be shared, and in that vulnerable space, if it's through a work of art or an experience of art, sometimes that's more accessible to people. So this is how it's going to help us to stand up for our deeply held beliefs, advocating for what's right, even when it's unpopular. So if people hadn't been doing this in our history, we'd be in a totally different world right now, and it probably wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be as good. So using the arts to really help us express our principles, values, the intentions that we have to communicate what is meaningful to us and what is our purpose is a very powerful aspect of engagement with the arts. And then again, like I said, at the core of a lot of this work, especially the transformational work, is the emotional resonance. Knowing what our emotions are in a moment by moment basis is the first step. That's the self-awareness. And then being able to harmonize and resonate within ourselves allows us then to resonate and harmonize with the emotions of other people that we are interacting with. And so art actually is a way that can help us to embody, encapsulate, communicate, and even transmit those emotions that are very abstract and communicate those with other people. Because when it comes down to it, emotions are the way that we truly can connect and relate to each other. It's not really so much the mental capacity to some degree, but really connection comes from a deep emotional connection. And from that, we can develop a greater sense of resilience because, if we're challenging the status quo, we're dealing with issues that people might have some resistance to, it's not popular, then it can cause emotions in us. Like I know I can get very hurt easily when people don't like my ideas or like an idea that I have. And just knowing that, I can develop a resilience where I can bounce back from that and really persevere in the face of challenges. And art is one of those great opportunities to practice that skill where you can really create art and not worry about the mistakes, process those difficult emotions, make different connections, as your mind is like seeing different metaphors and ways that things connect, and then expressing those in the art and helping us to persist through the challenges and even failures. Because, art, like in my classroom, we celebrate our mistakes, and art helps us move through that. And one of the ways that helps, one of the things that helps us is this sense of flow. And this is from Csikszentmihalyi, who talks about flow states. And so like getting into the arts, either experiencing it or creating it, we can get into this flow channel where he just defines it as a state of consciousness that is harmoniously ordered, in which all thoughts, intentions, feelings, and all the senses are focused on the same goal. But again, it's like that theater of knowing where our left brain is kind of taking a backseat, and we're just allowing that wisdom and artistic creative flow of the right brain to just take us to where we're trying to go effortlessly, and time just flies by and we're feeling the sense of joy. And that's something that we could then in that flow state transfer that to others. And ultimately that would lead to empowering the people around us, because as courageous, and even transformational leaders, one of the goals is to use our influence to empower others to be their best and live up to our full potential and make good decisions that help support our organizations, communities, and even our society and civilization. Yeah, I like to think in those big terms. So those are all of the concepts. I know I went through those very fast, but if you take the course, we can dive into these a lot more and really kind of hash out how this plays out in our own lives. But for the sake of time, I wanted to move on to our last section, which is kind of looking at the artists specifically. And I just want to show you just a couple examples of different artists who are very strong in the sense of being artistic leaders. You got Charles White here, who his work magnified the power of the Black figure through scale and form, communicating universal human themes while focusing attention on the lives of African Americans struggling for equality. So that's how he did with his work, back in the mid 20th century. Then at the top, we got Mariko Mori. She's a Japanese artist she's visionary. She merges the technological and the natural world, creating these synergistic, transcendent spaces that we can enter into. And then Edgar Heap of Birds below that with the words that are on the wall. Sometimes it doesn't really seem clear on what is going on here, but one of the things he tries to do with the words is he's a Native American artist, and he uses these word compositions to help people understand how language and native words are being used in our society. And then one of the classics and famous of the conceptual arts is Felix Gonzalez Torres, who would use kind of quotidian everyday objects to create metaphors that speak profoundly and deeply to our human condition. And if we had more time, I'd dive into all of these. But I wanted to try to challenge us with something a little different too. You may or may not be familiar with this, but remember I said there was this performative art component that artists who are performative artists actually live the art. And there's this one artist in particular who I'm just so inspired. It's a little controversial sometimes, but I'm so inspired by some of the work that she does. This particular piece, I'm going to show you just a very brief clip on this. It's like a 2-minute clip on the show that she did at the New York Metropolitan Art Museum in 2010. It was called The Artist is Present. And what she did was she just sat in a chair, see the table and the screen where she's sitting in this chair at the table, and there's an empty chair in front of her. And all she did was sit and allow her artist presence to be the art piece. And people would come and they would just sit and they'd have about a minute with her of just being with her. And then she would reset herself and do it again for the next person, and do it again for the next person. And she would do this for 3 months for 8 to 10 hours a day was her performance piece. So I want to just give us a taste. And this is like one of the moments where, actually, this is the one. You can see it. Okay, this is one of the moments that was the most profound from this experience. So I'm going to just play this video. We'll just have a few minutes afterwards to get any impressions on what you just saw. Whoops. Just trying to stop the video there. Quite work. Could you? All right. Sorry, I'm still troubleshooting technological things. I'm trying to stop the video. Not sure how that works exactly, but were you able to hear the sound?
No.
Oh, you couldn't hear the sound. Okay, there we go. Well, there was some very moving piano music, and then at the very end, everyone just gave a round of applause. I can go into the backstory of why that was such a profound moment for the artist and the person that came up to her, but just given that you saw what you saw visually at least, and I'll put I can share the link to that video if you want to see it again. What do you make of that? What's your response to what you just witnessed? I know I probably right at time actually. Any quick impressions?
Seemed pretty impactful, as if the man, maybe he was seen, and the tears in her eyes, and how she leaned across and took hands with the man.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the main thing that I wanted to just highlight from that is like the presence, the artist's presence, like how deeply moving it is to be present with another human being, how emotionally moving that can be. And that those emotions can be what leads to our growth, our courageous leadership, our transformation personally, and transformation of others around us due to our leadership. And it's just like, and that was the art. And that's what our art can be. And that is how we can add the art to our leadership. And so that's really what I wanted to leave with you all. And I have the handouts in the chat for the Theater of Knowing and Flow if you want to get some more information about that. There's also a handout that I created about practical applications to arts engagement and courageous leadership. If you want to have a look at that too, you can see some of the ways that this applies. I'd love to continue this conversation further, but I do believe I'm at time. Right, Kelly? So
Peter, this was
there.
It is, you are at time. It was fascinating. And yes, we need a couple more hours to just really dig in and just try some of these, just the experiences of how art can impact the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we interact are just so powerful. Thank you for introducing us to those ideas. For some of us, I know, for me, it's a relatively new concept. And I just think it's super powerful because it helps me to lead differently. So thank you for just really enriching our knowledge. Awesome. Folks, Peter is going to be teaching the first cohort of the Art of Leadership class starting in just a couple weeks. We're going to have another section of that will be taught probably in the spring. If you're interested in knowing more about that course or any of the courses in the Master of Arts and Leadership program, those are courses that you can take them as one-offs if there's a particular topic that you're really interested in, or we can talk about certificates or the master's program. Feel free to shoot me an email if that's something that you want to talk about. Also, as we have done with each one of our sessions today, we have created a discussion forum in our learning community for those of us who have access to our internal Canvas learning management system. And there is a discussion about the art of leadership. And if there are questions that you have, if there are reflections that you weren't able to share online, if there's information you'd like us to get to Peter, or if you just want to have dialogue with your colleagues about that combination and that intersection of art and leadership, feel free to discuss in that course room. Peter has access to it as well, because he's one of our faculty members, so he may jump in and out and participate. So definitely take advantage of that opportunity to continue the conversation. If I could give everyone who's online a little bit of a heads up about what happens next, we have about a 20-minute spot that we don't have any presenters. And I mentioned earlier in the introduction to the colloquium that one of our speakers, our Iron Man, Dr. Danny Powell, who is going to speak about sustaining courage through coaching by sustaining courage. I can't remember all of the words are mixed up, but absolutely fascinating person who has some great experiences coaching in the athletic sphere as well as in the business area, in the areas of finance. He's not able to join us. He had to be out of town. And so I've put together some opportunities for us to interface with some really big ideas that are beyond the hill, beyond Olivet. I've curated for us a series of videos, TED Talks, if you're familiar with TED Talks, that are the most popular TED Talks on the topic of courageous leadership. Together, they have over 7.5 million views. So in about 5 minutes, I'm going to start a playlist that's going to go through our lunch hour. It'll be, well, yeah, about through our lunch hour. And we are going to convene back again at 1 o'clock with our next session. And so we welcome you to... No, that is our next session, session 5. So it's going to go through our 40, it's going to go through that 20-minute spot of emptiness, and then through that session 5. And then we will reconvene at 1:50, a very similar idea, but different idea about arts and leadership. One of my very good friends and an amazing community catalyst, Colleen McNabb Everidge, is going to be joining us. She is the president of the Arts Angola League. Colleen, I have messed up the title, and you can share it with us when we get together this afternoon. But I'm super excited to introduce her after lunchtime. She has all kinds of experience in the arts as a performer. She's a jazz performer, as well as bringing people together around the idea of infusing communities with the arts. So if you are a fine arts person, if you're in the humanities, if that's an area that is an area of passion for you and you want to lead in that space, we've got a powerhouse coming at 1:50 this afternoon. So please come and join us. Invite your friends, come over to the Kulasamba Theater. We've got snacks, we've got coffee if you need coffee. We have pumpkin tarts. So come visit, and you can hang out in the theater and enjoy a couple of the sessions there, or jump back online. And we will be back with you live right around 1:50. In the meantime, enjoy the TED Talks, and thank you so much for spending the morning with us. So see you in a while.